Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Cordant, and in this video we are going to go over the build for Argenta. So this is the build I used for Argenta in my first playthrough of Rogue Trader on Unfair. So Argenta, we're going to discuss her role here. I typically, in my earlier videos of the other characters in the team composition, I mentioned what my game plan is. I will just give a brief summary here in case you didn't check those out. The main plan for my party, for the current setup that I have, especially once you get the second archetype, so around early mid-game until the end of the game, has been to not allow the enemies to even act. Enemies would, in most combats, just straight up die on turn 1. They would not even be able to fight back. This is done because we are able to generate a lot of momentum. We are able to manipulate the initiative of the combat by having someone like Cassia as a Grand Strategist, or by also using officers to give extra turns, especially if you combine an officer with the Grand Strategist. You can have a lot of extra resources available at that first round. With that, we give out a lot of buffs. We give extra turns to somebody able to generate a lot of momentum, like for example Idira in my case. We start triggering heroic acts, and you just have a snowball effect that keeps on getting larger and larger and larger until you basically kill everybody before they can even do anything. So the role of Argenta in this game plan is nothing more than a killer. The role of Argenta is to kill enemies. That's pretty much it. And there's nothing wrong with having a simple character, as long as they are good at what they do. So Argenta, I pretty much kept her in what I imagined that the game kind of intends for her. So she starts as a soldier, she comes in with a bolter weapon, so I went full on that, and I tried to capitalize on having high rate of fire weapons, bolter weapons, heavy bolter weapons, to have very, very damaging burst attacks. The way we did this is, like I said, she starts as a soldier, and I guess one of the things I want to mention before we get on with this is that I fully believe that Argenta is much better off early in the game with a sniper rifle than she is with a bolter weapon. If you want to use, firearms, like a rifle or a pistol or something, I do believe it's much better to go for a high accuracy weapon like a sniper early game instead of a bolter weapon. At least on Unfair. Everything I mentioned here is for Unfair. I didn't play in the other difficulties. I mean, I guess I did. In the early access, I think you only had up to core, and in those difficulties, it's fine to use a bolter weapon. But on Unfair, enemies get bonuses, so it's much, much harder to actually hit somebody with burst attacks early on. So my advice: turn off the bolter for a while, just pick up a sniper rifle and use that sniper rifle until you get to a point where you see yourself with more ballistic skill, more perception, more buffs from your party, and then you can make the switch back to your bolter and start shredding everything. Okay, so she starts with run and gun. The soldier gains +2 plus agility bonus divided by 2 MP. Their next attack costs -1 AP less and does not count toward attack limit per turn. So, as I have always said, anything that will benefit your action economy is good. You want it. In this case, we have an extra attack per turn. We get that attack costing less AP, and we also get more MP all in a single button. Quite nice. You get a penalty for it, but again, later on, this penalty means nothing to you. It's irrelevant. She starts with Demolition. I made her as a Demolition expert for my team, just because I wanted somebody for that particular skill check. No other reason. Revel in Slaughter. She also starts with this, I think. The soldier immediately removes the winded effect. Until the end of combat, the soldier gains the following bonuses: +10 ballistic skill, plus critical damage, and plus critical hit chance. The main downside that I see here is that there's a lot that's functioning based on agility, but agility is not really what we want to go for in the most part. We want to go for ballistic skill and we want to go for perception. Agility is kind of secondary, but it does work in these cases. This ability becomes available after the soldier kills 3 enemies and the kill count is not reset between rounds. So how does this actually work? Once you kill 3 enemies, you can use this. And this will work until the end of combat. And it stacks. So the more casts of Revel and Slaughter you can have, the better you will be. Now, it might seem like it's pretty restrictive, and it might not make sense to take this because you might think, okay, but by the time I'm going to be using this, I have already killed at least 3 enemies. Is it even worth it? I'm going to tell you why it is worth it. Because in this game, a lot of the combat encounters, from the start of the game until the end of the game, but more so after mid-game, I guess, you always have a bunch of fodder enemies. What I mean by fodder enemies are weak enemies. It's like just something to kind of take up your attention. They are very easy to kill. They're not very dangerous. But they take up space and they make up numbers in the enemy army. Okay? So it's not uncommon that you kill a bunch of enemies very early, because with your sniper rifle and with the traits she has and abilities, those shots will deal a lot of damage. You can a lot of times just one-shot enemies with a sniper rifle and very easily kill a bunch of them. If you are using burst weapons already, it's not uncommon to kill 3 or 4 enemies even in a single burst, depending on the layout of the enemies and how you manipulate them with someone like Cassia in terms of manipulating their movement. So it's not that hard to get this going, and I think she starts with this anyway, so might as well make use of it. It is a good skill. Firearm Mastery. This is the default heroic act of the soldier. The soldier gains the ability to make a number of extra attacks equal to their weapon's rate of fire, minimum of 2, using the weapon attack that normally costs the least AP. These attacks do not spend AP. Until the end of the soldier's turn, their first attack against each new enemy automatically scores a critical hit, and the soldier immediately reloads their current weapon. So, this is better if you have a weapon with a high rate of fire. For obvious reasons, you can attack more often, but it is still very good even if you are just using a sniper rifle, because you have your shot from the sniper rifle by default, and assuming that you have no other sources of bonus attacks, which we will have a lot of, but for now let's keep them out of the way, you still get 2 extra attacks in that one turn. You will crit with every first attack, and the crit from a sniper rifle deals a lot of damage. You do not spend AP on this, it's for free. And, also very important, you immediately reload your weapon. Because you fired a lot of bullets with Argenta, you will have to reload a couple of times in encounters. So, by having something that for free will give you the reload, it also helps out in your action economy quite a bit. Because reload, I think, usually costs, like at least 2 action points, maybe even more. For that same reason, we also take rapid reload. Like I mentioned, we want to reload every now and again with Argenta. So rapid reload makes reloading cost 2 less AP to a minimum of 1. I think this was also nerfed. I believe I could have it cost 0, if I'm not mistaken, but it's still good. And the first reload in a combat does not... okay, never mind. This is how it worked. Yeah, the first reload does not cost AP. Now, you do need to reload every now and again, but for most fights, you reload at maximum like 1 time. Depending on the stage of the game that you are in and which weapon you are using, I think by the time you reloaded once, the combat's probably over. So this is very, very good for both of these reasons, but especially for this second one here. We take ballistic skill as kind of our main stat to take early on, and then we also go for perception. Both of these are going to help us out a lot. Ballistic skill will increase your base hit chance for range attacks with weapon effective range. The base hit chance for range attacks within a weapon's effective range is 30 plus ballistic skill %. So, as long as you are able to reach 100 here, that's enough. You don't need any more. What you need after that is perception, because perception will reduce the enemy's dodge chance. So you want to couple those together. Unpredictable. The soldier gains 10% critical hit chance. The more crits you do, the more damage you do, so you want this. And this bonus is doubled against enemies from which the soldier is protected by cover at the moment of the attack. Typically, you want to be behind cover, especially early in the game, with Argenta, so this will help you out quite a bit. More ballistic skill, rapid fire. This is one of the main things for Argenta here. The soldier's next burst attack will have its rate of fire doubled, but deal 25% less damage. All the shots will follow random trajectories. Only works on weapons capable of burst fire. Now, as I mentioned, when I played this game, I tried to make burst weapons work early on. I then realized that the best option would have been for the sniper rifle. That's why I'm giving you guys that suggestion now. But at the time, I wasn't really sure of it, so I took rapid fire here. Actually, at the time, I picked something different that then got changed with the patch. But regardless, I went for a similar effect of this, like this, of rapid fire. And I would just say, take this later. Unless you really want to try and make work burst weapons, or if you just want to have the sniper rifle for a primary weapon and swap to burst if you are at close range, that's also a possibility, then you can make use of this. I actually respec Argenta sometime around mid-game, so it didn't really matter the order in which I did this level up, but if I had to do it again, I would take this later. In any case, this will double the rate of fire. Double the bullets shot, that's a lot more damage. Shield of Faith. The devotee gains 16% to armor against attacks of demons and warp damage, and the devotee's resolve is also permanently increased by 2. The more resolve we have, the more momentum we generate. It's also a good choice, although I think this one you can pick maybe later, I would say. Rank 8, Unfaltering Fire. Rapid fire no longer reduces damage. So if you are trying to rely on rapid fire, this is just a 25% increase on your rapid fire shots. Quite good. More demolition. Firearm Mastery Upgrade 2. Until the end of combat, the soldier's rate of fire is increased by 30%. So this makes a lot of sense once you start using high rate of fire weapons like bolters. Fired Up. Whenever the soldier deals damage, their critical damage is increased by 1% until the end of combat. So let's think about this. If you start using burst weapons, you start shooting a bunch of bullets per attack, and you are gonna get multiple attacks per turn. Now, this doesn't say whenever you attack, it says whenever you deal damage. So if you burst fire somebody and you hit them with, let's say, 10 bullets, you get this benefit 10 times for that one attack. So this can actually stack up very rapidly, and you end up doing a lot of damage later on. I took willpower here just to get to a point where I could get another bonus, because you only have a bonus on even amounts. So something like 40 or 50 or 60, you would not get anything on a 65, for example, here. So I wanted it to be a round number, because she can also benefit from her origin talent by having more willpower to generate more momentum. Entrench. I would have, for example, taken this one over here instead of rapid fire. The soldier immediately spends all their AP and MP and gains a 30% bonus to cover efficiency. So this is mostly a defensive option. The next time the soldier uses run and gun, they gain back all spent AP and MP plus 1 additional AP. It also resets the cooldown of all other soldier abilities except for run and gun. So it gives you a very good defensive option because you get more cover efficiency. And there are times where you shoot somebody and then you can't do anything else because you spent your attack, but you still have MP and AP available. This allows you to use that when you're on your next run and gun. I like this a lot. It can be very effective in certain situations, so nice to have. Medicae for medkits, no other reason. Perception, like I mentioned, perception will reduce the enemy dodge chance against the character's attacks. So this is why one perception as well. We're basically only using ranged weapons with her. You can also go for a kind of a hybrid build of melee plus ranged, especially with the Arch-militant, but I just went for a pure ranged option. Bolt weapon expert, I was using bolter weapons a lot, so this made sense. Extra armor penetration. As I said before, the main problem for people using high burst fire weapons or high rate of fire weapons is that each individual shot in a burst deals low damage. Those weapons don't do a lot of damage. If you look, for example, over here at the sniper rifle, you can see 42 to 65 damage with 40% armor pen. If we look at the high rate of fire weapon, it deals 12 to 18 with only 25 armor penetration. So you don't do a lot of damage per shot. And the upside is you shoot a lot, right? So that kind of makes up for the fact that it's low damage. However, the main enemy of this kind of weapon is going to be enemy armor. Enemy armor will reduce the amount of damage you do by an enormous amount. There are times where you will even see like 0 damage dealt or 1 damage dealt if you are facing off against an enemy with high armor, and especially if he also has some deflection. This is mostly relevant for later in the game, where you find some of these tougher opponents where burst fire will basically do nothing. You have to overcome that in some way, and this helps out. Second skin, the soldier's medium armor does not reduce dodge. Pretty cool, because medium armor typically will have a penalty to dodge. This just makes Argenta be a little bit safer. Nimble, more dodge. Again, she's typically playing from the backline, she's at range. We want to avoid people shooting us, and dodge will do just that. It will not die for extra HP, more buffer so we don't die. And then firearm mastery upgrade 3. Until the end of combat, all soldiers' attacks are 20% harder to dodge. And until the end of combat, the soldier's range attacks gain 10% armor penetration. So this one plus the other upgrade are my favorite ones, and I think they work very well with what we're doing here. From the soldier, this is it. We will now go into Arch-militant. So a lot of what I'm going to cover here I already covered on Abelard, so forgive me if I don't go into as much detail on some of these things because I might forget, because I've already spoken about it. But Arch-militant was my favorite option for Argenta. The main reason is versatility, right? With versatility, the more you get stacks of versatility, the more weapon skill and ballistic skill you have, and the more damage you will deal as a consequence. So Arch-militant allows you to get a lot of attacks per turn, so it will allow you to get a lot of versatility stacks quickly, which will just empower Argenta very, very much. And the way you get these stacks, by the way, is every time you make a different type of attack, for example, a single shot, and then a single target melee, or an area melee, area shot, or burst, you will get an additional stack of versatility. And we want to stack those high as quickly as possible. On rank 2, I took Devastating Attack. I love this one quite a bit. The Arch-militant sex attack, if it hits, will cause all the targets to take a toughness resistance test with a -16 penalty. If failed, the targets will suffer a negative effect based on the attack's damage type. Impact damage, which is the type of damage that bolter weapons do, knocks the target prone for 1 round. If you burst an area and you hit multiple enemies, you can prone them all. This is very powerful. It's a very nice disabling effect. Piercing and rending damage, I think from the snipers, inflict bleeding and slow down the target until the end of combat, also very good. And energy and other types of weapon inflicts blinded on a target until the end of combat. I'm not really using any of these things, so I'm mostly benefiting from the impact, proning enemies, and piercing and rending damage for bleed and especially slow. Very useful. I liked using this from the time I got it until the end of the game. Always ready, just as like on Abelard, this is the more important skill to take on Arch-militant. You want to boost up your stacks of versatility as quickly as possible, and this allows you to start with 2. Say superiority. Very, very cool. And this is the heroic act. Until the end of combat, the Arch-militant can make 1 additional attack per turn, including 1 additional attack on a turn this heroic act was used. The first attack after this ability and each turn afterwards costs 0 AP, so more action economy. You get 1 more attack per turn, it will cost 0 AP. I mean, what's not to like? Especially on somebody that like Argenta, using burst weapons, where a single burst can shred anybody. Just having more attacks is amazing. More ballistic skill, critical versatility. You gain +5 plus number of stacks of versatility bonus to critical damage. So the more stacks you have, the more critical damage you will deal. Amazing. Wildfire. The Arch-militant sex attack this turn will cost 0 AP, will not count toward attack limit per turn. The cost of this ability is reduced by 1 for every 4 stacks of versatility. I believe this was nerfed. I think previously it could go down to 0, but it's still very good. With a heavy bolter, typically if you are burst firing, it will cost you 3 AP. This will make it cost only 1, I guess, because it's 1 over here and then 0 over there. Not only that, it does not count toward attack limit per turn. Very powerful. It will increase your attacks per turn, it will increase your versatility stacks. Just overall, one of the best features of the Arch-militant. Heavy weapon proficiency reduces the required strength value for heavy weapons by 25. So if you want to start using heavy weapons such as the heavy bolter, you do need this to be able to meet the prerequisite. Flash fire, just make it so we can use wildfire more rapidly. It will reduce by 1 AP for every 3 stacks of versatility instead of 4. So you can use it faster. Overpower. When firing heavy weapons, which we are quite often, critical hit chance is increased by 8%. This is based on our ballistic skill bonus. And by the way, this bonus goes up to very high amounts with the versatility stacks as well as buffs from our characters, our allies. This is going to be a lot higher. And critical damage increased by 24%, which again is triple your ballistic skill bonus. We can stack this up to much, much higher than this. Heavy gunner. The Arch-militant's heavy weapons attack cost -1 action point, minimum of 1. More action economy, make things cost less is always better. More perception. Say superiority upgrade 4. We can now use both the heroic act of the Arch-militant archetype and the heroic act of the warrior or soldier archetype in a single combat. By default, you can only use one heroic act per combat, regardless of the archetype. This allows you to use both of them. And both of them are quite good for Argenta, so having access to both is quite nice, obviously. Adaptability. Gaining a stack of versatility increases critical hit chance by 5% until the end of the turn and stacks. We get a lot of attacks per turn. This will go up to very high amounts. Some agility over here, I imagine because I had enough perception and ballistic skill, so I went into some of this as well. Stronger together. All allies, excluding Xenos, in the current party gain 5 to the same characteristic as was chosen for Humanity's Finest. So, Argenta has Humanity's Finest from her character creation. This will just give us 5 extra characteristics for everybody based on that. At this point, you don't really have a lot of very crucial things to pick, so you just pick whatever can give you some kind of minor benefit or that you want to have fun with, in my opinion. So I went for this one. And finally, on rank 15, I went for Kick. Now, this might seem a little bit weird, because Argenta is only a ranged character, or mostly a ranged character. The reason for taking Kick, let me actually read what this does, by the way. The Arch-militant makes a melee attack with a kick, dealing 9 damage, so it's based on toughness and strength, doesn't matter too much for Argenta, instead of weapon damage. The attack does not count toward attack limit per turn, and counts as a single melee attack for the purposes of versatility. The attack cannot be parried and will push the target 2 cells away. So, one of the main problems you can have with ranged characters is if an enemy gets into melee. Because if they get into melee with you, you can no longer use your ranged weapons. You just can't. So, you have 2 options. Well, you have multiple options, let's say. You can swap to a weapon that you can use in melee, like a pistol. That works. You can swap to a melee weapon and hit them. That kind of works, but you're not going to do much with Argenta, or with this build, with a melee weapon. Or you can run away and trigger an attack of opportunity, which we definitely don't want, right? So, by using Kick, we can push target away and make ourselves be free to shoot our weapons once again. Not only that, if it does end up being used, it will also count for the attack. It will also count for the purpose of getting more versatility. So just an overall very nice utility tool that can also give you some nice bonuses. Accustomed to Glory. Whenever the Arch-militant or their ally uses an heroic act or a desperate measure, which we do want to use very early on, as I've mentioned, the Arch-militant gains +1 and +10% damage on all attacks until the end of the combat. I mentioned this for Abelard, I'm going to mention here again. Like I discussed, high rate of fire weapons typically deal a low amount of damage per shot. So, if you take a low amount of damage per shot weapon, and you try to increase the damage by a percentage, it's not going to go up by much, right? If you deal 2 damage and you increase the damage by 100%, you deal 3 damage or 4 damage. It's not going to be much, right? It doesn't make much of a difference. But if you can get a way of increasing by a static amount, like for example +1, then it's gonna scale much, much better. Because all of your other skills that do scale in a percentage are going to make that weapon a lot more powerful. So this is actually quite good. Because we're gonna get +1 for every heroic act used. This can stack up quite a bit, and you will deal a lot more damage because of it. Strength here, Medicae, Breaking Attack. Devastating Attack also reduces the target's armor by 7% and toughness by 10 until the end of the combat does not stack. Like I mentioned, armor is something that's very bad for burst weapons. We want to reduce it as much as possible. And if you lower toughness of the enemy, they will lose some resistance tests based on toughness, and they will also lose maximum wounds. So you will just straight up cut some of their HP by having this. More agility, more toughness, because I couldn't pick what I wanted, I imagine, like ballistic skill or perception. Breaking point. Heavy weapons deal +1 and +10% damage, so the same reason as I took for Accustomed to Glory. Static amount, quite good, and then percentage as well. And you also ignore 2 deflection. Again, the same reason. Weapons that deal low damage, if you are facing off against somebody with deflection, you will basically deal no damage. So any way you have to cut through deflection is going to help out tremendously. Because let's not forget, when you are dealing damage to an opponent, all of your multiplicative bonuses, your percentage bonuses, will only actually apply to the damage that goes through. So if somebody has 50 deflection and you shoot for 50 damage, you will deal 0 damage, period. Even if you have an increase of 10,000 damage, doesn't matter. So you want to deal with deflection quickly. And then, says priority upgrade 3, until the end of combat, the Arch-militant attacks do not spend all MP. Additionally, each attack grants stacking bonus of dodge for 1 round. So you can kill somebody, reposition, kill somebody, reposition, do a bunch of fun things. From the Arch-militant, this is my pick. Moving on to Exemplar. First pick, Extermination. Any damage the character deals is increased by 1 for every attack they have made this combat. Does not affect damage over time effects, bleeding, burning, or toxin. So, same reason as before. Static amount of increase for low damage weapons is going to be very, very good. Muzzle velocity. The first hit of each burst attack deals additional damage equal to the weapon's current rate of fire. We can have a lot of rate of fire on our weapons, so this increases the damage by a bit. Again, you are only picking the leftover skills here from the soldier or the Arch-militant, so it's not going to be as critical, but it does give you a decent bonus. Demolition, Distract. Any of the Arch-militant's burst attacks and melee attacks reduce the dodge of all enemies hit by 8% until the end of combat. Again, a minor bonus. Swift movements, more movement points, always good. Critical Velocity. The character's critical hit chance and critical damage are increased by 5% of their dodge. So, the more dodge you have, the more critical chance and damage you are going to have. And we do have a decent amount of dodge on Argenta. Especially if you use a medium armor. Discipline. The Arch-militant gains +1 stack of versatility whenever an ally grants Arch-militant an extra turn. It's a minor buff. Tactical Disengage. Dash does not end the soldier's movement for the turn. Enemies adjacent to the starting point of dash will consider the soldier their least priority target during their next turn. So, if you have somebody close to you, this will make you their least priority target, which means they will not even try to shoot you. It can be useful, but again, minor benefit here. Reckless Rush. This one I like a lot. So, extra movement points based on your agility, I think. Yep. And if you have stacks of versatility, their number is increased by 3 until the end of the turn. So, it's mostly because of the movement points. You can move further. Or if you get, let's say, a bring it down extra turn from an officer that's not Cassia, and you don't get extra movement points because of it, by default, you can't actually move. So, by using this, you unlock movement in those extra turns. It's just overall very helpful. And if you also want to deal more damage or enable wildfire more rapidly, it will also help out for that. So very good skill to have. All Out, again, it's gonna buff Reckless Rush, while under effects of Reckless Rush, Arch-militant's attacks do not spend movement points. So you can kill, move, kill, move, kill, move. I went for more ballistic skill over here. Pinpoint accuracy. The character ignores 4 of the enemy's deflection. Round it down. Again, very cool. This is based on ballistic skill bonus, which can stack up. We want to take care of deflection quickly. And later on, enemies will have quite a bit of deflection, especially bosses. Swift Slaughter. You can use Reveling Slaughter after 2 kills instead of 3. Minor benefit again. Integrity. While at full wounds, a soldier has plus 10 ballistic skill and plus 2 MP. At this point, every combat was finishing on the first turn of combat, so we could always guarantee this pretty much. Dependable. The Arch-militant gains a plus 5 plus number of stacks versatility bonus to armor. Just for extra defenses, why not? More perception. Degraded defense. Whenever the character deals damage to an enemy, this is the same thing I picked on Idira. That enemy suffers plus 1 stack of the degraded defense effect for every 6 damage the character has dealt. Whenever an ally attacks that enemy, they deal additional damage equal to the number of degraded defense stacks. So Argenta can deal quite a bit of damage. And one thing you can use with this, especially when paired with some other items I will show soon, what you can do is you can start the fight, or you can start your turn by using a high damaging shot from a sniper rifle to lower their armor, lower their deflection, all that good stuff, and also apply degraded defense. And then you can burst fire for a lot more damage, which will also apply more degraded defense. And again, shots from a burst don't do a lot of damage, but you will always deal additional damage equal to the number of the stacks of the degraded defense. So it will increase the damage of each bullet by quite a bit. It's very, very good. Rack and Ruin. After the soldier deals damage to 3 different enemies, the soldier gains 26% more damage for the next attack in the current combat. Minor benefit. I don't like this too much, but there's nothing else to pick at this point. Contempt for the Weak. 20% extra critical damage against targets that are stunned, prone, or blinded. At this point, we had a lot of ways of inflicting these, so it makes sense to just get this extra damage. On rank 17, we got Crippling Blasts. Any ranged area and burst attacks of the Arch-militant reduce the weapon skill of all enemies hit by 10 until the end of combat, does not attack. Just a nice debuff. And I also went for more perception. So, in terms of level ups, this is what we got. Now, let's look at our characteristics here. So as I've mentioned, we mostly want ballistic skill up to a point where you no longer miss. Okay, so you want to guarantee that you have at least 100% hit chance, which is 30 plus the ballistic skill percentage. Although, from what I read, I don't think it says over here, but essentially, every hit chance above 100% goes into your critical hit chance. So it's not a bad thing necessarily to go above 100 here, or above 70, because it's going to be 30 plus 70 is 100%. It's not bad going above 100% because it will add into your critical hit chance, but you get so much ballistic skill from your Arch-militant, from versatility stacks, that you don't need to get this very high. And I do value lowering the dodge chance of enemies more than trying to crit. Because even if you have a critical hit chance of 300%, if you cannot hit the enemy, you will do 0 damage. So that's why I prefer to have this way. And then for extra points, some agility and some strength to be able to actually use the heavy weapons. We have 7 deflection because I ended up going for a power armor, which is part of our storyline or the quest, and it looks very cool. 90% armor, 88% dodge, quite decent. And let's look at the items here. So it looks very cool. Yeah, it's the main reason why I picked this armor, because it looks very cool. She has the Gunslinger's Helmet. Grants the wearer's range attacks plus 2 times rate of fire % damage. So if you are using a high rate of fire weapon, you will deal a lot more damage, which is quite nice. I went for the Sorority's Power Armor. So, like I mentioned, if your plan is to go for Power Armor, I believe it's still worth taking that talent on the Soldier archetype, which removes the dodge penalty on medium armor, because you will use medium armor for the majority of the game if you have that talent. But when you complete the questline for Argenta, you get this item here, which gives you a lot of armor, gives you a lot of deflection. It also gives you a large penalty, but still. And after using Heroic Act, the wearer immediately uses War Hymn or Furious Recital regardless of its cooldown. So this can also just generate a lot of momentum once you use your Heroic Act. And you also have plus 15 strength. The main reason for this armor, like I said, is you get some defenses. Sure, that's good. But it's mostly for, after using the Heroic Act, getting a free War Hymn or a Furious Recital, which gives us more momentum, and it just looks very cool. It's also a part of the game, right? I want my characters to look good, and she looks very good with this. Now, on to one of the most important items you can get on Argenta, armor-piercing ammo. The wielder's single shots and deadeye shots reduce the target's deflection by damage dealt. So, in this game, I don't exactly remember the highest amount of deflection that I saw, but I think it's around 50. And if you think about 50, this means you will never deal damage with your bolter. So what you want to do is, for high deflection enemies, you want to have a high damaging single fire weapon, like a sniper rifle, that will couple up very well with this one. Because you can deal a lot of damage with the sniper rifle because of the high base damage, because of the armor penetration, because of our talents that will also reduce deflection and armor. And this initial shot will deal a lot of damage, more often than not some kind of value way above 50, which basically will negate all of the deflection of the target for the rest of the combat. And once you do that, then you are free to burst away and shred them, ignoring completely their deflection. Very, very powerful item, very important, I believe, for this kind of build on Argenta. For my sniper rifle, I'm using Gloom Rifle. I would say any kind of high damage, high penetration sniper rifle is going to do very well with her. So just pick which one you love the most. Damage from mortar penetration is always equal to 100%, added bonus, and deals an additional plus 3 times target's deflection damage. So it couples very, very well with armor-piercing ammo. The more deflection the target has, the more damage you deal. Perfect for armor-piercing and removing their deflection. As my main weapon of choice, though, I went for the improved heavy bolter. This one deals a decent amount of damage for a bolter weapon with high rate of fire, 12 to 18, 25% armor penetration, it's not too bad. Rate of fire is 9, but each kill with this weapon increases the rate of fire by 1. Now, I believe this weapon was nerfed. I would have to check on my playthrough videos to actually make sure, but I think you were able to increase the rate of fire of this weapon by, or in a much simpler fashion than just killing enemies. In any case, 9 rate of fire, and you can increase rate of fire as well, makes it so you can shoot a lot of bullets at a time. Very nice weapon. Then I have the Wraithbone Necklace, gives me agility and perception, they are both good for me, so why not? We have the Long Range Aim Lens, increases range attack distance by the wearer's ballistic skill bonus divided by 2 cells. One of the problems you have sometimes with burst weapons is that their range is not that large. So by having something that will increase the effective range just means you can deal your full damage more often than otherwise. Like if you are hitting somebody outside of the effective range, your damage is cut by quite a bit. Compensator Gloves, also very cool weapon. The wearer ignores weapon recoil when performing burst attacks, and the rate of fire of the wearer's weapon is increased by ballistic skill divided by 2%. And again, ballistic skill goes up by quite a bit with versatility, so the rate of fire can also go up by a very large amount. The way recoil works is, when you are shooting in a burst, the hit chance of all shots after the first one is reduced by the recoil parameter of the weapon. So the weapon, like this one, has a recoil of 35, which is quite high. These gloves mean you will never get a 2-hit penalty when you are burst firing. So very, very cool if you want to hit accurately with your bursts. But the main reason really is this one right here, increasing rate of fire. I also have the Shadow Guide Cloak. The wearer becomes the least priority target as long as they have no enemies or allies adjacent. Amazing. We want to have Argenta free from enemies. You want to be in position to just shoot freely without anybody hindering your shooting capabilities. So by making yourself the least priority target, nobody will attack you, just means Argenta is always safe. And then Skirmisher Boots. Whenever the wearer deals damage to an enemy, the wearer has a 25% chance to gain 2 MP. Let's note, it does not say whenever the wearer attacks. It's when it deals damage. So let's think about, for example, you have this weapon with a rate of fire of 9 and it scales with your basic skill and your kills. And you can also use your rapid fire ability to double this. So by default, with just what we have right now, we would be shooting 18 bullets. So that's 18 instances of damage. For every one of those, you have a 25% chance to gain movement points. So you get a lot of movement points with boots such as these. They're quite useful. They're nothing too special, but they are very useful. And then in terms of items to be here, I just have medkits, as I like to have them on all of my characters. In case somebody gets wounded, something like that, this can help out. Grenades, even though I never really use them all that much. And I had Scorcher, which I also never used. The user gains +1 AP and immediately resets cooldowns on all attacks and abilities, or tech abilities. At the start of the user's next turn, they gain +1 stack of staggered and last until the end of combat. This is basically a free buff, because Idira with Invigorate can remove staggered, so you can just use this with no penalty, basically. But again, I never felt the need, even on Unfair, to use these items, but it's just added bonuses if you do. So there we go. This is Argenta, my build for my playthrough. It served me very, very well. She was able to deal a lot of damage to a lot of people and fire tremendous amounts of bullets on every single turn. It is even more so than a useful character. It is a very fun character. I think if you wanted to swap Argenta for somebody, Yirliet would also be a nice choice. She's not really built for bursting, but she can deal so much damage with her sniper rifle on single shots that it's kind of insane. So, range DPS, simple character, but very, very effective. This will be it for this video, my friends. As always, I want to thank you all for being here with me on the channel, talking about some Rogue Trader character builds. This one was so far Argenta. Questions, suggestions, leave a comment below. If you are enjoying the content, consider subscribing for more. Many more videos coming out soon, and it's also a free and easy way to support the channel. I hope to see you all in the next episode, and until then, stay safe, everyone.